On today's show, the Houston Rockets trade for AJ Griffin from the Hawks. Why Griffin didn't work out in Atlanta. Plus, that wasn't all the Rockets did the other day. They also signed N'Faly Dante to a two-way deal. Plus, the Summer League schedule was released and so much more. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the best way you can help our show out. Just swing by the YouTube video. Comment anything below. Come say go Rockets. Come let me know how you feel about the AJ Griffin trade. All that good stuff. Put it in the YouTube comments. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. A lot to get to on today's episode as Rafael Stone and the Rockets front office have been very, very busy striking up a bunch of little deals and honestly really blown away by this one. This was a fantastic pickup for the Houston Rockets, trading for AJ Griffin from the Atlanta Hawks. So we're going to explore this a couple different ways. First, we'll just present kind of what AJ Griffin brings to the Houston Rockets. First off, he was, a highly touted prospect coming out of Duke, 6'6" forward, great versatility. He had a really strong rookie season, averaged about 9 points per game, about 20 minutes a night, and shot 39% from downtown. Then, unfortunately, he wound up kind of falling out of the rotation late in his rookie season when Quinn Snyder took over the Atlanta Hawks. More on that and kind of why things didn't work out in Atlanta here in segment 2. We're going to get to a snippet from Locked On Hawks host Brad Rowland, who talked about his perspective of the AJ Griffin trade and kind of why it made sense for Atlanta, why he didn't work out with the Hawks, and why the Rockets were able to get him for cheap the way that they were. Wow, my goodness. Well, this is incredible timing. My diabetes device decides to go off in the middle of the show. Anyways, incredible production value as always. All right, let's first off, how did this trade come about? Well, the Rockets traded their second-round draft pick, the 44th overall selection, for AJ Griffin. This was, for all intents and purposes, it was a salary dump for the Hawks. But I love this trade for the Rockets because this is a low-risk, high-reward play. Right, because AJ Griffin, he is a strong wing prospect. He's still only like 20 years old. He's younger than a lot of players that were just drafted in this 2024 NBA draft, right? So that shows that he's still got a long ways to go, that he has a chance to kind of maybe rehabilitate his image, get back on track, because there have been maybe some off-the-court concerns and stuff as part of the reason why things didn't work out at Atlanta. But he had a really strong, promising start to his NBA career, and if he can get back on track here in Houston, which the Rockets have shown, for better or for worse, that they have been an organization that's willing to kind of take on these rehabilitation projects and try and help revive careers of certain NBA players. Now that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I like this trade a lot. I think this is a great low-risk, high-reward play. It adds another really young, talented wing piece to this Rockets roster. Not somebody that they're going to have to rely on. It's not like they need AJ Griffin to produce at a high level for it to be a good trade, right? This is just something where if it works out for the Rockets, then great. You've just lucked into yet another really young, really talented wing piece for your young core. And it's kind of funny when you look at kind of how this all, I guess, worked out in the sense that, in the 2022 draft, AJ Griffin was taken 16th overall. Tari Eason was taken right after him at 17. And I very much vividly remember that pre-draft process and talking to members of the Rockets organization who were internally very, very high on AJ Griffin and what he could potentially bring to the Rockets, having multiple conversations and thinking that, when it came down to it after that 15th pick and Griffin and Tari Eason were both still on the board, I remember thinking, wow, I'd be content with the Rockets taking either of these guys, and the Rockets were guaranteed to get one of them. And now they have both of them on the roster. So TBD on whether or not AJ Griffin will actually work out or kind of amount to anything or be able to kind of turn his career back around here in Houston. I will say it's kind of funny that Jeff Green was actually teammates with AJ Griffin's father, Adrian, during Jeff Green's rookie season with the Seattle Supersonics back in 2007, 2008. So, Uncle Jeff has been around the block for a minute. I wonder how many times that's happened where you've had a player who has played with the father and then subsequently the son in the NBA or even on the same team in this instance. So that's kind of crazy. And I will say one more note here on the AJ Griffin thing, because I do think it's a really strong upside play. I love the use of kind of the draft assets that were able to be turned into AJ Griffin here, but I want to point out something that's kind of an important thing to note here, and that's the relationship aspect of NBA transactions and deals and how this all works out, because I will remind you, and we'll revisit this, a year ago when the Rockets were approaching free agency and they were pursuing Dillon Brooks, Fred VanVleet, and Brook Lopez, who ultimately didn't work out. If you'll remember, the Rockets had a bunch of deals lined up to clear the cap space required to go and outright sign Brook Lopez. And a couple of those deals involved sending guys to the Atlanta Hawks. And the Rockets gave up some second round draft picks to be able to offload that salary to the Hawks. And I'll be completely honest, guys, I can't remember off the top of my head whether it was Ty or Garuba or Jacob. I can't remember who got sent to what teams, right? The Grizzlies were involved in one of these trades. It was a bunch of different moving parts to make this work. But point being is the Rockets had these trades lined up. And when the Brook Lopez deal fell through, myself and many others were actually kind of frustrated that the Rockets went ahead with these deals, and kind of it seemed at the time that they were burning and wasting assets, wasting second round picks to offload these contracts that they ultimately didn't have to offload anymore because they didn't need the money for Brook Lopez. Now, I will say that looking back on this now, because Stone agreed to these deals in principle and because he followed through with them, despite the fact that Brook Lopez didn't honor his agreement with the Rockets and turned around and used them as leverage to get more money out of the Milwaukee Bucks, I think it's important to note that this is how quality relationships are maintained at the NBA front office level, right? Where Rafael Stone went through with his deal with the Hawks. He honored his agreement, even though Brook Lopez decided to renege and was in bad faith in his, upholding his end of the agreement for the Rockets. I think that when it came time for Atlanta to do this salary dump, that's probably the first thing that popped in their mind. Is usually when you're doing a salary dump like this, you're not going to be looking for the best possible deal available. You're just going to call up your buddy GM or whoever you like the most and be like, hey, we got this guy, we're trying to get him off our hands. Like, do you want him? And because of that relationship that Rafael Stone has with the Atlanta front office, the Rockets were probably first on their list of teams to call them up and say, hey, like, we're going to get rid of AJ Griffin. Is this a guy that you would want to take a chance on? And so I really like that from a relationship perspective angle, because again, I do think that Rafael Stone's predecessor, Daryl Morey, he had a knack for rubbing other general managers the wrong way, because he was always, and still to this day, is always trying to pull one over on opposing GMs, right? He's always trying to, quote unquote, win a deal instead of just, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, let's have a good relationship, whatever. And you can tell that by the way that this Hawks deal went down. You can tell that by how Stone was able to have this kind of ongoing dialogue and discussion with Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets, and how they, have a good working relationship there. So I do think from a big picture perspective, Stone probably does a much better job of harboring a positive image and maintaining decent relationships with his peers around the NBA than Daryl Morey did, as well as maintaining, right? It was really early on when Stone first took over, right? It looked like he was kind of rehabilitating the Rockets' entire image when it came to how they treated players, how they maintained relationships with their players, with their coaches, all that stuff. Daryl Morey treated everybody like assets. If he could trade one player to even get 5% better, you were gone in Daryl Morey's eyes. Stone hasn't necessarily done that. And there have been some downsides to that, maybe holding on to assets or players for a bit longer than he probably should have. But this is an example of the relationships aspect of being a general manager, controlling a front office, whatever, working out in his favor, in the Rockets' favor. So I do really love this pickup for the Rockets. I'm curious your thoughts. How do you feel about the Rockets getting AJ Griffin? What would you like to potentially see him bring to the team next year? Let me know about your thoughts in those YouTube comments. Coming up, we're going to get into why AJ Griffin didn't work out in Atlanta, as well as kind of envisioning what he could bring to this Houston Rockets team. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. They've got killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Look, I don't know about you, but when I'm buying tickets to an event, could be to go to, a game, could be a concert, could be going to the theater, whatever, I absolutely hate when I'm buying the tickets and you go through the whole process and then at the very end they're like, okay, here's you're getting charged for the digital handling fee, the service fee, the transaction fee, whatever, all these fees that sneak up on you at the end, right? That doesn't happen with Game Time. They have their all-in price, so you know exactly how much you're paying throughout the whole process. They don't surprise you, they don't price gouge you at the end with all these service charges. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, where I decided to actually wear my Atlanta Hawks giveaway shirt that they gave out at the season opener not this past season, but the 1 year ago. So the 2022-2023 season opener where the Rockets were in Atlanta for the start of the year. They put these out on the chairs, and I figured, I would rep the ATL a little bit just as like a thank you for, them gifting AJ Griffin to the Houston Rockets. So with that, let's actually go ahead and hear from our good friend Brad Rowland over at Locked On Hawks to kind of hear his perspective on why AJ Griffin didn't work out in Atlanta and the kind of player that the Houston Rockets are getting their hands on.
So many people have asked me this question broadly, like, how does a guy who goes 16th in the draft 2 years ago get traded for the 44th pick 2 years later? And it was all basically about this last season. So he wasn't great at Summer League a year ago, last July. He wasn't great in October or November. It was a little bit strange. He wasn't awful, but just wasn't playing very well. And then he had the lengthy personal absence. So he was gone away from the team for several weeks, kind of under the cloud of mystery. We didn't really, the Hawks, and look, this is AJ's right, for sure. It was deemed to be a personal absence. The Hawks respected that privacy of AJ. Didn't really release any details about that. He did one interview when he came back with not a ton of details. There was family stuff that was reported out there. Mental health stuff potentially was speculated on, all that stuff. But we'll never know the full details there, I wouldn't guess. But he didn't play basketball for quite some time and was clearly struggling personally on some level. He came back, but was basically completely off the radar for the Hawks as far as basketball was concerned for most of the season after that. He did go to the G League in February, showed some signs. I thought he played better there and showed some physical stuff that was better than he was early in the year, playing with a little bit more confidence. But I was hearing even back then, like pre-deadline in February, that he was potentially going to be moved by the Hawks at that point in time. It didn't happen, but that has never really stopped. And look, there is basketball stuff too. So AJ functioned much better and much more naturally, I would say, for his skill set and his tendencies under Nate McMillan. So that doesn't mean that Nate is better than Quinn. In fact, he's not, in my opinion. But Nate ran a much more methodical. They didn't really run as much. It was not as based on tempo and quick decisions, et cetera. And AJ kind of plays at his own speed right now. He's not a fast twitch guy, never has been. He's a processor that's kind of a little bit slower, more plodding. Quinn likes to play faster again. AJ didn't really take to that immediately. We saw that even last year when Quinn came in midseason the previous year and basically fell out of the rotation by the end of the year. And, I talked about this a lot at the time because everybody was healthy at that point in time, which is a far cry from now, or at least it hasn't been recently for the Hawks. Quinn wanted to play 9 guys, and he basically had to choose between Jalen and AJ. And at the time, it seems crazy now because of Jalen's ascent, but that was a real decision. AJ had been playing more and was probably a little bit ahead of Jalen for part of that season, and then Jalen came back. Anyway, he fell out of rotation a little bit there. It was the same this year, even before the personal absence. He was not playing a lot, which was kind of surprising, but not totally shocking. And look, AJ is still a very talented guy. The shooting is real. The wing, being a wing who could shoot it and had that pedigree as a former top 5 prospect in his class, that's all interesting. He's also very young. He's younger than a lot of guys who were drafted in the last 2 days, for instance. But for me, I think he needed to change the scenery. I think AJ, if he was going to kind of fix his career and get back on the right track, it might have been needed to go somewhere else just to have a change of scenery, different coach, different situation, all that stuff. I'll be rooting for AJ to succeed. I got to say, I think he could revive his career in Houston, but the reaction.
Okay, so that was Brad Rowland from over at Locked On Hawks. Shout out to Brad for his insight, his analysis. Does a great job with the Locked On Network. Really fantastic dude. And I reached out to him and asked him for some thoughts, and he said he had a really good segment on AJ Griffin. Said I was more than welcome to kind of share some of that insight on our show over here, so that Rockets fans can get a little bit better perspective on exactly what went wrong with AJ Griffin in Atlanta. And again, we don't know the severity of the off the court stuff with AJ Griffin. We do, however, know that again, the Rockets have in the past taken on some of these kind of reclamation projects of players and tried to turn around their careers and whatnot. So we'll see what ultimately happens with AJ Griffin. But if he's able to get back on the basketball court, which as it looks right now, it appears that AJ Griffin and Cam Whitmore will both be taking place or both be participating, I should say, in Las Vegas Summer League alongside Reed Shepherd and N'Faly Dante, who the Rockets signed to a 2-way deal out of Oregon. More on Dante here in just a second. So the Rockets should have a very, very exciting Summer League roster out there. And they will not. So no participation from Amin Thompson, because Amin Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. were both selected to the USA Select team. So they'll be practicing with the USA Select team. I believe their practices start a little bit before, like right before Vegas Summer League takes place. So that's why Amin Thompson isn't back at Summer League. And it's just Cam Whitmore. If Amin Thompson hadn't been selected for the USA Select team, then I'm sure that he would be playing in Summer League again as well. It's a little disappointing because I was very curious to see how Reed Shepherd and Amin Thompson would look playing alongside one another, but we'll still get a ton of exciting, some high-flying basketball with Cam Whitmore, AJ Griffin, Reed Shepherd out there, and then N'Faly Dante holding it down in the middle. So I do think AJ Griffin has a chance if he can turn things around right. Again, 6'6" forward, can shoot the lights out of the ball, good size, capable defender. Again, really strong rookie year, just, kind of fell out of the rotation a little bit. Maybe with the way that the Rockets kind of run things offensively, a little bit less high octane, a little bit more methodical with some of the offensive schemes and approach with Ime Udoka instead of Quinn Snyder, who does really, or at least in Atlanta, has been really prioritizing pushing the pace with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Obviously, the Hawks moving on from DeJounte Murray now. So we'll see how things look over in Atlanta. But I just wanted to, share some of the insight from Brad Rowland over there. I do think that AJ Griffin's probably going to be buried a little bit deeper on the rotation. He's a fringe pickup, and maybe he's able to work things out, right? And if the Rockets are able to get AJ Griffin, who still has, a couple years left on his rookie deal, so he's on a relatively team-friendly contract, the same timeline as the contracts for Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason. If AJ Griffin's able to turn things around, then, he's the kind of guy that could very easily, you could envision being a part of the Rockets' kind of forward rotation for years to come, right? Again, a knockdown shooter, good size, decent defender, and you could do a lot worse than having a forward rotation of Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and AJ Griffin for years to come, depending on what ultimately happens with Dillon Brooks a little bit further down the line. But let's get some quick thoughts on Oregon center N'Faly Dante, who the Rockets decided to sign to a 2-way contract immediately after the conclusion of the second round of the NBA draft. This dude is pretty big. He's 22 years old. He is 6'11", 260 pounds, and in about 32 minutes a game at Oregon, he averaged 17 points on just under 70% shooting from the floor, 9.2 rebounds, and just under 2 blocks and 2 steals per game. this kid, I have not had a chance to watch any of his film yet, but at least as far as what I understand, he's got great length. I take that back. I've seen a little bit of him. Like there was like a couple different like Twitter, YouTube highlight reels or whatever. He's got great length, great arms. He has had some knee issues. Unfortunately, that's been kind of the major knock on him, but there is a chance for him to make it as kind of a good switchable defender with great length, and he plays above the rim. So guess what? He is a
lob threat.
So there's a strong little addition for the Houston Rockets. It'll be interesting to see how he plays in Vegas Summer League for sure. Now, more on that here in just a second, as the Rockets schedule has been released for Summer League. We're going to talk about that, the competition that they'll be facing, and some expectations for what we want to see out of the guys in Summer League. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, we have the Las Vegas Summer League schedule for your Houston Rockets. Again, the NBA wastes almost no time in getting out the official Vegas Summer League schedule once the NBA draft has concluded. They got to get all those marquee matchups, those head-to-head matchups against each other. And speaking of marquee matchup, the Rockets actually tip off their Vegas Summer League against none other than Bronny James and the Los Angeles Lakers. That is the first game on Friday, July 12th. It'll tip off at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, which means it'll be 4:30 p.m. in Las Vegas, the West Coast time zone there. I'll actually be in attendance. It'll be my 4th year in attendance for Vegas Summer League. I highly recommend checking it out if you've never gone before. It is a ton of fun. It's a great experience, both from a media perspective, because I go there as media. I've gone there the last few years as media. But my first year at Vegas Summer League, I went as a fan, and it's honestly a ton of fun. You can buy tickets, and they sell like all-day ticket passes for like $35-40, and you get to go to all the games on one day. They've got the 2 gyms back-to-back, the Thomas and Mack Center, and then the H&P Pavilion right next door. So they've got games that are staggered by 30 minutes. So you get tip-off, and then 30 minutes later, there's another game tipping off in the next gym. Honestly, I highly recommend going to it if you've never gone. This might be the last Summer League for a while where the Rockets have a lot of young talent participating in Summer League. So if you've never gone and if you've been on the fence about going, I definitely recommend trying to check it out. This will probably be the last year again for a while that the Rockets have a good competitive Summer League roster where you're going to want to see Reed Shepherd and Cam Whitmore and AJ Griffin competing and playing together. It's going to be a ton of fun. So if you're going, let me know. If you're going, I'll try to maybe put together like a little Rockets meetup, hangout session. Maybe we'll grab some food or just meet up at one of the games and kick it and hang out. Should be a lot of fun, honestly. Their next game, so they tip off. They have the Lakers game first. Their next matchup is going to be Sunday, July 14th, and that'll be against the Washington Wizards, tipping off at 5 p.m. Central Time. So the Rockets will be taking on Alex Sarr and the Washington Wizards. Should be a really great matchup there. Also worth noting that the Lakers did get why am I blanking on Connect's first name? Dalton Connect. There we go. Sorry. They got Dalton Connect, who, complete sidebar, chose the jersey number 4, and his nickname is now going to be Connect 4. Absolutely elite NBA nickname right there. So Bronny James and Dalton Connect for the Lakers. Washington Wizards on Sunday, July 14th. Then the Rockets actually also play again Monday, July 15th. So usually there's a spot somewhere in Summer League where you play a set of back-to-back games. Just so happens the Rockets got their back-to-back a little bit earlier in the schedule, which is nice because I'll be able to be there for all 3 of those games. So then Monday, July 15th, they're playing the Detroit Pistons, 5:30 p.m. tip-off Central Time. And then Thursday, July 18th, they'll be playing the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that'll be really great to see Rob Dillingham there. And then who did the Pistons wind up taking? Why am I blanking on who the Pistons took with their draft pick? I'm like completely blanking, and now it's actually really upsetting me. Who draft board? Ron Holland. There we go. Why was I blanking? I don't know why I was thinking. Okay. Anyways, they'll be taking on the Pistons and Ron Holland in that Detroit matchup. And then they'll have Rob Dillingham and the Minnesota Timberwolves in their fourth matchup. And then they'll have one more game on either the 20th or the 21st. Opponent and time TBD, because they always wait to decide those. And then maybe they will get a sixth game, the championship game, if they make it far enough into Vegas Summer League, or if they have, the undefeated record or whatever. It's always a little confusing how they kind of stagger the schedule in Vegas Summer League. But my expectations for Summer League, right? And this is kind of the same every Summer League, but the marquee players for the Rocket Summer League team, so obviously Reed Sheppard, Cam Whitmore, and AJ Griffin, right? Those are kind of the headliners. Those guys will probably play 2, maybe 3 games each. I'd be shocked if Cam Whitmore played more than 2 games. He's going to be this year's version of Jabari and Tari, essentially. AJ Griffin might get a little bit more burn since he basically kind of fell out of the Hawks rotation, and the Rockets are trying to learn and see what they might have with him. And then Reed Sheppard, they don't want to... I mean, they let Cam Whitmore push and play the entirety of Summer League last year. Maybe they'll let Reed Sheppard play all 5 or 6 of the games this summer. Maybe they shut him down a little bit earlier. It's always a little... gray area as to how they treat their prospects when they attend Vegas Summer League. But I'm honestly really looking forward to seeing how Reed Sheppard runs an offense. He's going to be given the ball, and he's going to be given a lot of responsibility right out of the gate to run and initiate and orchestrate that Rockets Summer League offense, right? And he's going to have 2 really lethal weapons next to him in Cam Whitmore and AJ Griffin on the wings, guys who can absolutely fill it up, but guys who maybe don't necessarily need somebody to set up their own, to set up the offense for them, but guys who are very deadly catch and shoot players who you can kick it out to off of drives, off of little offensive sets. So I'm really curious to see how Reed Sheppard kind of responds to that challenge in Vegas Summer League, how he responds to different defensive schemes, probably being drafted up to try and slow him down. And then for Cam Whitmore, I'm really interested to see how the end of season version of Cam Whitmore translates to Summer League. We know that last summer when Jabari and Tari played after their rookie seasons, we saw Jabari Smith Jr. at Summer League be tasked with doing a lot more offensively than he'd done pretty much his entire rookie season with Steven Silas, right? We saw Jabari Smith Jr. walking the ball up the floor. We saw him initiating offense. We saw him getting into dribble penetration moves and basically really stepping outside of his comfort zone as a player. So I'm very curious if we're going to see Cam Whitmore be tasked with doing the same thing, right? Because Reed Sheppard can't play all 40 minutes of the Summer League contest, right? He's not going to play. He's going to have to get a breather here and there. So when Reed Sheppard is resting, or potentially even because Reed Sheppard can play off ball, I want to see how many on-ball reps Cam Whitmore gets, where he's potentially running the offense, handling some pick-and-roll actions, trying to create for his teammates, right? Getting downhill, attracting a double team, collapsing the defense, and then seeing how his playmaking, how his processing ability has continued to grow and develop. Because at the end of the season, right, he started looking really good as a playmaker, right? He was racking up the assists there at the end. He was really kind of letting the offense come to him instead of forcing things offensively, instead of tunnel visioning like he had at points throughout the earlier part of the season. So I'm really curious what happens with Cam Whitmore in Summer League, how good he potentially looks, and if the Rockets try to experiment and make him maybe get a little bit uncomfortable, right? Force him to handle the basketball, force him to create for his teammates, that kind of thing. And then with AJ Griffin, just seeing what he can do, right? Because again, he largely fell out of the Hawks rotation, wasn't looked at favorably with Quinn Snyder, unfortunately. And I just want to see him go out there and just, knock down the open shots that he gets, not try to do too much, just prove that, hey, I'm a good player. I deserve a spot in NBA rotation, and the Rockets aren't going to regret cashing in a second round draft pick for me. Again, we could be looking back on this trade for AJ Griffin, a couple years from now, 5 years from now, whatever, thinking, my goodness, what a mistake by the Atlanta Hawks getting rid of this young man. Because he has all the skill set, all the tools in the world to be a really high quality NBA player. Just TBD on whether or not he can turn things around here with the Rockets. But those are some of my expectations. Those are some of my hopes for Las Vegas Summer League. What are you looking forward to? What are you hoping to see from the Houston Rockets in Summer League? What do you want to see out of Reed Sheppard, Cam Whitmore, and AJ Griffin, and then N'Faly Dante? Just give me some good lobs. Give me a few good lob passes between Reed Sheppard and N'Faly Dante.
Lob threat.
And I'll be perfectly happy. But with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review helps us out a ton. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.